Hey guys, Mr. Farmer here, recording Chapter 2 of Parametric Modeling with Autodesk Inventor. We're moving on to a new book. We're done with AutoCAD and starting Inventor. So Mr. Dieter should have already covered Chapter 1. You're familiar with how to open the program, how to save files, that sort of thing. So today we're going to move on to Parametric Modeling Fundamentals. Learning objectives for this video: you're going to learn how to make an extruded solid. You're going to learn basic parametric modeling procedures, how to do 2D sketches, understand the design approach called shape before size, and then learn some dynamic viewing commands and editing dimensions. So when you begin, of course, this is your splash page. This is where all of your projects are saved. We're just going to start a new part today. We're going to work on we're going to design in inches using IPS, inches, pounds, and seconds. And the general procedure here is pretty simple, right? You can find this on page 3 of Chapter 2. Number 1, create a rough 2D sketch, right? Number 2, apply constraints and dimensions to clean it up. Number 3, extrude, revolve, or sweep that parametric two-dimensional sketch. Number 4, add additional parametric features as you go along. Number 5, refine the design as needed. And number 6, create the desired drawing views. So we'll learn how to do drawing views in a later video. All we need to worry about right now is making the shape. The shape that we're going to do is called the adjuster design. It looks like this. And we're going to create it in 2 parts. It's pretty simple. If you want to follow along, this is Chapter 2. We are in a standard part. This is an IPT file, Inventor part IPT. And let's see here. On the screen, just a couple of nomenclature things. This thing across the top, this is your quick access toolbar, quick access. This big thing down here is the ribbon. We wouldn't call that a toolbar because that's the part up top, so don't get those confused. This is the ribbon. If your ribbon disappears, this happens all the time. If you end up having a screen like this and you can't find your ribbon, this little icon right here, you can choose different views, right? If you hit this little arrow, it will cycle through full view, condensed view, small view, and no ribbon at all. So if you lose your ribbon, that's how you get it back, that little icon right there. This is your user coordinate system, UCS. This is your browser over here. Some people call it a model tree. It's called a browser. And then this is, of course, is your graphics window. UCS. And just a reminder, we're working in a 3D Cartesian coordinate plane. What does that mean? That means that we're working on a 3D plane. So we've got the XY plane, the YZ plane, and the XZ plane. And you can use the view cube here. This is the view cube to rotate and look at the different sides of this plane, right? That's your home view. That's a general isometric view. So we're going to go ahead and start modeling here. We are going to model on the XY plane. That's usually where we start because that's the plane that you're familiar with. So I'm going to start a 2D sketch on the XY plane. And I'm going to start with a rough sketch. This is not going to look anything at all like the final part is going to look. It's just going to have a rough geometry, right? Couple of guidelines: create a sketch that's proportional to the desired shape. Keep the sketches simple, and then exaggerate any angles because you're going to refine them anyway. And then draw the geometry so that it doesn't overlap. In other words, your shape should hold water. It should have one basic outline without any intersections or gaps or openings. So let's see here. We're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to draw the basic shape here. I'm going to use the line tool, okay? The book doesn't state this, but as a rule of thumb, it's always good to start at the origin. This is your origin point, and if you get close to it, it will lock on, that little green dot. That way your sketch is locked to the origin. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm just going to draw up vertically, over, down. Looks like a big capital L. And you'll notice these little icons right there that are popping up, the little white icons. Those have meanings. So this one here that I'm circling around, that means that that line is vertically constrained. Okay. These icons that look like capital T's, they mean that these are perpendicular constrained. In other words, that's a 90-degree angle. On page 11 of the book, you can see all of these constraints. You're going to want to memorize those and know what they are. They're going to come up on the quiz. So know your constraints. There's vertical, horizontal, parallel, perpendicular, coincident, concentric, and tangent. If you know those, you're in good shape. Okay, so now we are going to move on to step 2. We've created a rough sketch. We're going to dimension this thing. We're going to dimension it to have proper dimensions, 2.5 by 2.5. So here we go. We're done with the line tool. I'm going to hit escape to be done with that. And then I'm going to go to dimension. This is the smart dimension tool. Click here. And I want this bottom line to be 2.5 inches wide, 2.5 inches. Notice how it got bigger. If you want to just recalibrate your window to include this, you can click the front of your view cube. Notice how that makes it the perfect size. I'm going to make this one 2.5 as well. I'm going to recalibrate. I'm going to make this 0.75, and then I'll make this line right here 0.75. Recalibrate my window, and you can move these dimensions around. You can click and drag, put them wherever you want. So that looks good right there. You're in sketch mode right now, so as soon as we're done with sketch mode and we extrude, these dimensions are going to go away. The visibility is going to be turned off, but they're still there. Notice how all the lines changed from blue to black. This is very important. If you leave something unconstrained, you'll have a blue or a purple line. That means it's not fully locked in. In other words, I could take this line and move it freely. It's not constrained. So make sure before you extrude, all of your lines should turn black. All of these lines are black. That means they're fully constrained. I'm going to finish the sketch. Finish sketch, click this home button to recalibrate my window here, and then we are going to extrude, right? Inventor has a neat function. It's called hover to discover, and if you hover your mouse over a function or a tool, it will actually tell you what that tool does. It'll give you the name, the shortcut, the definition, and then a little illustration of what it does. So extruding, what is extruding? It creates a feature or a body by adding depth to a closed profile, right? Closed profile creates solids or surfaces. Open profiles create surfaces. We're not going to worry about surfaces right now. So I'm going to extrude this out. And then notice it creates a solid. So I can move it forwards or backwards. This dialog box has all kinds of options here. You can flip the direction. You can extrude both ways, equal distances, right? That's called a mid-plane extrusion. Or you can extrude both ways in differing dimensions. Okay, this is an asymmetric mid-plane extrusion. Now, don't get in the habit of using these arrows here to extrude, because that's not very exact. We're actually going to type in what we want. So I'm going to do a mid-plane symmetric, and I'm going to extrude this 2.5 inches. Okay, great. I've got my first solid model. Notice how the dimensions went away. They're still there, right? The sketch was consumed by the feature, right? So a feature over here in your browser, this is kind of like a diary of everything you've done. A feature is a 3D component. So extrusion number 1 is a feature. And notice it's got a little plus sign here. If I hit that plus sign, you can see the sketch that it consumed. So the sketch is still there. In fact, you can see it in green right there. There's our original sketch. But it was consumed by the feature, right? If you want to change either of these things, you can right-click and then edit the sketch. It'll take you back to your sketch. Or you can right-click and edit the feature, and it'll take you back to your extrusion so you can edit that, okay? Just remember, 2D sketches are consumed by 3D features. Very important. So we're going to keep going here. A quick shortcut. There's all kinds of shortcuts in this program that you'll learn. I probably don't even know them all. If you're zoomed in or zoomed out, if you've lost your part, the F6 key will take you right back to home view. That's F as in Foxtrot, and then the number 6, F6 will take you to home view. So let's say I got way zoomed out and I don't even know where my part is. I can click the home button, or you can click F6 and it'll come flashing back to you. Alright, we're going to keep going. Just a couple of things on the view cube. You've got a front view, isometric view, top view, right view, pretty much anything you want. You can look at this part, or you can grab this thing and freely rotate it. Just hold your mouse down and freely rotate. Go back to home view. If you hold your middle mouse button, that's the panning tool. So that moves around parallel to your view. You've also got all kinds of tools right here. This is the full navigation wheel. So you can orbit, zoom, rewind, pan, look up, walk, center. If you hold orbit, this kind of orbits around a pivot point. If you do zoom, that zooms in and out. If you do pan, that moves it around, up, down. That moves up and down, top to bottom. Anything you want is in that full navigation wheel. You've got your pan tool here. You've got your zoom all, zoom window, zoom selected. This is just like AutoCAD. You've got free orbit around any point. Whatever view you want, it's all available to you there, right? Okay. Constrained orbit, free orbit. Good. If you have questions about the view cube, let me know in class. We can go over it. A couple of shortcuts. F2 in the left mouse button is panning. F3 is zooming. Middle mouse button is turning the mouse wheel is zooming, and middle mouse button is panning. And then Shift and middle mouse button is dynamic rotate. Shift and middle mouse button is dynamic rotate. So I'm going to go back to home view. All right. And we are going to finish this shape. And then we're going to talk about some views. So I'm going to sketch again. This time I'm not going to sketch on a plane. So we had original 3 planes, YZ, XZ, XY. Well, now we've got a lot of planes. Each one of these surfaces is considered its own plane, right? So now I'm going to sketch on the top of this shape. And this will make more sense here in just a second. And I'm going to kind of roughly draw this shape here. Notice the constraints are popping up: parallel, vertical, horizontal. Now, this is super important. I've got to close this in. So right now there's a big gap here. There is no line. In fact, I'm going to do this a little bit differently just to show you. So I want to start here. That's not even connected, right? I'm going to draw a line out. Line, line. Good. And then I'm going to use my dimension tool. We'll say this is 2.5. We'll say this is 2.5. This will be 0.75. 0.75. Notice I've got 4 dimensions, but all of my lines are still purple. That's because this is still free to move around. I can move up, over, down. I can move this diagonally. I need to lock it down some way. So one way to do that is to say I'm going to dimension from here to here. I want these things to touch. So when 2 things are touching, the space between them becomes 0. You can dimension something to 0. That's one way to do it, right? Same thing here to here. I want these to be parallel. I want them to be collinear, so the dimension would become 0. Notice all of the lines have now turned black. That means they're fully constrained. This will no longer move around. So finish sketch, F6, and then I'm going to extrude this one. Instead of extruding it back, I'm going to extrude it down. So let's extrude. I'm going to change the direction, and I'm going to extrude this down 2.5 inches. Now it's joined to my original solid. Notice I have another extrusion, which consumed another sketch. So over here in my browser, I've got extrusion 1, sketch 1, extrusion 2, sketch 2. Very good. We're going to keep going. It looks like it wants to put a hole over here, so I'm going to sketch right here. I'm going to use the circle tool and rough sketch. Then I'm going to use my dimension tool to clean it up. I want my diameter to be, 0.75. And then I'm going to use my dimension tool to place this circle. Notice right now, this circle is just kind of floating around, right? I'm going to use my dimension tool. I'm going to say from here to here will be 1.25. And from here to here will be 0.75. Finish sketch. Now I'm going to do something a little bit different. If I extrude, right, that adds material. But I'm going to extrude cut. So right here is the cut option. So extrude, extrude cut. And extrude cut will actually remove material. See how that's cutting that out there like a drill? And I'm just going to extrude cut through all. That means it's going to cut through all the material. There's also to a surface and to next surface. So there we go. And you can rotate the view cube and see how that's cut through there. All right, last piece. We are going to chamfer this corner. So now I'm going to sketch on this corner. right? And then I'm going to use the line tool to go through here and draw these two lines and connect them. And we'll use the dimension tool to clean that up. So the dimension here is going to be, let's see, 1 inch from point to point. Here to here is 1 inch. And then I'm going to use an angled, 1 inch. Then I'm going to use an angled dimension. So I'm going to click the horizontal line and the angled line, and I'm going to make this 45 degrees. So you can dimension angular as well as linear. And then we're going to extrude cut this. Extrude cut, here's where you would use, instead of using through all, because that would go through everything, we're going to use to next, right? That means that it cuts until it hits the next surface. We'll hit OK, and that is our completed drawing based on the dimensions we have. Now, the last thing we're going to cover here are different ways to view this. If you go to View and Visual Style, there's like 12 different views you can use. So Realistic takes away the edges. We've got Shaded with edges, Shaded with hidden lines, so there's all your hidden lines. Wireframe with hidden edges, and then there's some other ones that you'll use for illustrations like watercolor or technical illustration, that kind of thing. So that is the intro to the solid modeling techniques we're going to use. Use a rough sketch, clean it up with dimensions, refine it, extrude it, and then we're going to convert this into a drawing later on. If you have questions, let me know. We'll go over this in class, and thanks for watching.